This week, I sit down with Lindner, and he shares his #1 walleye lure, his #1 smallmouth bass lure, and a down south winter fishing hotspot for us northern boys. Welcome to this week's episode of Ask the Buzz, the show where you send us your fishing questions and we answer them. I'm Nick Lindner, and with me this week is the man who needs no introduction, Lindner. And what do you got going on lately here, Al?
Dreaming about some sun and open water fishing. I'm watching all of the television shows now, and naturally there's still a lot of ice fishing shows on, but there's a lot of soft water shows starting to show, and I'm kind of dreaming again. It's middle of winter. I'm kind of thinking about some open water for anything. Walleyes, smallmouth, largemouth, stripers, crappies, cat, you name it. I want to be in a boat again for a little while.
I'm with you there. You know, I like to get out and do a little ice fishing, but open water is on my mind as well. And a lot of these questions are, well, I guess all these questions are open water based, so a little teaser there. So I guess,
and admittedly, he doesn't ask me anything about ice fishing anymore. I haven't done a lot of it. I've been gone most of the winters for a long time. So he says, I'm going to pass. Said, there's a lot better ice fishermen with a lot more knowledge than you, Al. I said, amen, you're right. I'll do the open water stuff.
Right on. Well, let's jump into question number 1. And this question was actually written specifically for you from Jared Parker. He asked, if Lindner could pick only one walleye lure, what would it be and why?
That's really simple. For me, it's really simple. It's a jig and rep. Now, I want to quantify that a little bit. And the second bait would be a jig with soft plastics. But I say a jig and wrap, when the water temperature gets to around the high 50s in spring of the year, well past the spawn, around the high 50s, and from there on out all the way into almost ice up in fall, it's my favorite bait. It's the first bait that I'll read. I never go on the water without one tied on, ever. And it produces fish for me all season long, and in so many cases, it outfishes most other baits that I've seen ever. It's the most amazing walleye producing lure I've ever seen. Those of you that followed my career for a long time, watched the shows for the last 5-6 years, you've seen me say that time and time again. This bait is a reaction bait. It produces fish when other baits don't even come close. When people are saying the fish aren't biting and a bite is off, I can pick up a jig and wrap and have done this countless numbers of times over the years. Mm-hmm. And guys are saying, well, I'm dragging live bait rigs. It's the middle of summer. It's a 95 degrees hot, calm and sunny. One of my favorite times to put a jig and wrap on and go catch myself 30 or 40 walleyes in the middle of the afternoon when everybody else is whining about how bad the bite is. I got to wait till the 45 minutes at sunset to get a few bites. Not if you put one of these things on. It's a reaction bite, and it's a phenomenal producing bait. And one little thing that a lot of people overlook is this tiny little swivel on here. Mm-hmm. To fish this thing right, you need a swivel. I put the swivel anywhere from 15 to 18 inches above the bait. And I do a lot of casting with the jig and wrap. Probably 50% of the time I'm casting with a jig and wrap. 40% of the time I'm pulling with a jig and wrap. 10% of the time I'm vertical fishing and watching the jig and wrap underneath my transducer on the bow of the boat. And then when you do a lot of casting like that, the bait will spin when you're casting it and flipping. So you got day in and day out, you want to have that swivel on there to eliminate the line twist. It's a simple thing that a lot of people overlook. And I know some people that say, well, the hooks are so small on this thing. Doesn't make no difference. I know people that change the hooks. They feel they're hooking up better, landing more fish. I take it right out of the box, just the way it was made, and can catch as many fish as you're ever going to catch by changing the hooks. It doesn't make a difference to me. Mm-hmm. The key is to fish the bait slow. To fight the fish. Fight the fish slow.
Sure.
You can't, because the hooks are small, and that's the key. Most people lose fish on a jig and wrap because they're pumping the fish a little bit too hard. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, and because of the weight of it and with the smaller hooks, the other tip you want to keep in mind, when that fish gets near to the surface, your buddy better have a net under it because that fish will come up, and you know that walleye head shake where it goes thunk, thunk, and if it's like a 4, 5, 6 pound fish where they can really roll like this, if that head comes out of the water coming to the net and he goes once this way and back, the jigging wrap comes out of his mouth.
Right.
Mouth. You've got to be quick on the net. And that's the only a couple of things to be more efficient.
Last,
with the bait.
Right. Last summer, I was out fishing with my buddies Joel Nelson and Brett McComas, and we forgot a net. And I hooked like one of my biggest walleyes ever. And we brought it in, or I was reeling it in, and Joel was reaching over to grab it, and he missed it the first time. And I got lucky, and we got it the second time, but that usually doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't. They'll use it, especially if it's a big fish, they roll it over.
So what is kind of the good overall size that you like to use before we jump off that?
In most cases, for walleye, I do a 7 and a 9.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, and it's about 50-50 with each of them. Yeah, you know, once in a great while, when I get fish real shallow, I'll go to a 5. And I won't write a 5 off.
Sure.
Yeah, you know, and yeah, I should say a little bit about rod, reel, line too on for the jig and wrap. And,
yeah, we might. I mean, we covered everything else, so might as well.
What my favorite action. This is a St. Croix Icon, and in this case, it's a 6/8 medium action, and I like this. 6/8, 6/10 for fishing the bait. I got a ballistic, a Daiwa ballistic on here, size 20, and I got monofilament on here. Can't say enough about fishing a jig and wrap with monofilament. I know guys that'll stay with braid. I know guys that'll stay with a fluorocarbon, but day in and day out, I've been doing this. I don't know how many fish I've caught in people that I fish with that have done this a lot over the years. We played with the fluorocarbon, we played with the braid, we played with the mono. And you will definitely land, nothing to do with the strike,
sure, but
land way more fish with monofilament because you need a little bit of that give because of the small hooks on a jig and wrap. It is incredible. The worst thing you could do is fish braid. It's going to cost you more fish. I know guys are, oh, come on, Al, I feel it's so good on a braid. It's going to cost you, it's going to cost you, it's going to cost you. If you're going to be a serious jig and wrap walleye fisherman and want to maximize everything with it, make sure you use monofilament. Do I sound forceful on it? I'm trying to help you catch and land more fish.
Right. Did you say what pound test you like to use or anything along those lines?
A 10 pound test mono is fine.
Okay.
It does the job. Yeah, you could go a little heavier if you're going to a 9, you know, and you're into some really big fish. Yeah, you know, the line really doesn't make too much difference. This is a reaction bite.
Yeah.
You know, that's the key. It's a reaction bite. So
well, everybody,
10 pound is a good average.
Yeah, everybody wants to rig up their rod and reel just like Al when they're jig and wrap fishing, so I figured I would ask.
Do what I just suggested and you're going to be fishing it real right. I've spent thousands of hours trying to fine tune this. What I just told you is the best of the best of the best to maximize the bait.
Right on. Very good. So we're going to jump into question number 2 now. A little bit of a change of pace. Similar question, but so we're actually going with another one of Jared's questions, and he asked, what if you could only pick one lure for smallmouth bass?
This one won't be quite as long as the description of what to use on the jig and wrap and how to fish it. It's a tube, a tube, a tube, or a tube. What about color? Green pumpkin, green pumpkin, green pumpkin, 90% of the time. I don't care what the watercolor is. I don't care where you're fishing for smallmouth. It is a mainstay. Now you can fish them with an exposed jig head, and this is a difference, or an internal like I'm holding here. I fish that exposed weight, and I glue it on the tube. And a lot of people ask me, why do you do that? Why don't you keep it just internally like this? There is times that bait drops so much different. It is much more, it doesn't get the erratic drop that you get when it's internal like this. Yep. It's much more subtle. And you want, when you're fishing, I fish it on an extremely light jig head, like a 1/16 ounce or a 3/32 at a max. And I guarantee you, there's many, many, many days that you'll see the exposed jig head glued on that tube, and you're going to outfish the internal tube by a long shot. I don't know why it is. You watch it in the water, you'll see it's a different kind of drop.
Sure.
And it's real subtle. And my son Troy uses it. He fishes a lot of tournaments, and these guys get in a boat with him, and they're dumbfounded because he's got all his tubes, and he's got them rigged 2 different ways, but he mostly fishes it on a jig head most of the time. And he's made a lot of money doing that. There is a difference. And I know a lot of you haven't done it. Most of you are fishing that tube rigged like this. You got to try the other method. You have to. It will make a difference. And the weight of the tube is the key. Yeah,
sure.
You know, rule of thumb. I try to fish the lightest tube I can get away with. That slow, light gliding fall.
You get more bites.
It's really, really important. Now there is a little opposite. There is a time that you can go to a heavier head on that when you get in deeper water, and you can actually snap that tube. Yeah, you know, you'll increase the size. By the way, I fish 2.5, 3, 3.5, or 4-inch tubes. That's the range that I use most of the time. And in fall, when those fish are going on that 4-inch tube on a heavier head, when you're fishing deeper water, and where you're almost like snap jigging that tube off the bottom, and it'll glide back where it triggers a lot more bites. But anybody that does a lot of fishing for smallmouth know how deadly a tube is. But like any kind of bait, there's a lot of little nuances, such as the pound test lines, such as the weight, and I think the weight of the tube day in and day out is probably the most important thing.
Right on. Well, I'd love to ask you 10 more questions, but I think this is going to be our last one. And so this one is from Walter, and Walter's retiring and looking for somewhere to move. He's looking for a place that's not too hot, not too cold, has good walleyes, smallmouth, and maybe even muskie. He's looked at Bull Shoals, Dale Hollow, and even Traverse City. And so Walter wants to know, where do you think he should move? And where's your dream retirement location?
You know what? When you just named some of the locations, Dale Hollow, Bull Shoals, you were so close to really good water. You weren't that far off. You're within driving distance. You know where I would suggest going? Northeast Tennessee. In Norris, you get up in Northeast Tennessee, and there's a whole lake. Norris is one of the lakes in Cherokee. Norris has got walleyes, it's got muskies in it, largemouth, spots, smallmouth. Cherokee, a Bassmaster is going to be there in a short while from now. My son Troy fished Cherokee. He says it's one of the best smallmouth lakes he's ever been on. He caught smallies up to 5 pounds in there. My next winter vacation, when I get time to get away in the winter, is starting in about February. I want to go to Northeast Tennessee, camp. I'll go rent myself a place in the heart of all of the lakes there, and there's a lot of great water there. And the way you described it, Walter, that's where I would go. That's where I would go. And the fishing is really quite good, especially in the winter months.
Right on. Well, that's all we got for you. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate the time. I'm sure
you all.
We only got to 3 questions, but I'm sure Al will be coming on here, you know, in a handful of episodes. Probably when there's open water.
You got that right.
But for all of you at home, thanks for watching, and you keep on sending us questions. We'll keep answering them.